Good evening. I am Þorkell Palsson. I am the Baron of Wastekeep, the Exchequer for the Canton of Cornerbeer, the Laurel Exchequer for the Heralds, the Inland's Reporting Deputy. In the past, I have been the Exchequer for the Barony of Wastekeep, and I'm on the training staff. Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm on the training staff for Ontier. I'm going to share a portion of my screen. What I have here is a PowerPoint that was written by Etienne, and it is her intro for becoming an Exchequer. For those of you who don't know, Mistress Etienne was the Kingdom Exchequer. She was the Laurel Sovereigns of Arms Exchequer. She is currently the Exchequer for the Barony of Madrona, if I'm not mistaken, and the Ontier College of Heralds, and she is just stepped up as the events deputy for the kingdom. For those of you who don't know, she was my pelican, so I call her mom. If you're a new, this is written for new Exchequers, so there's a lot of things on the new Exchequer side of things, but basically the Exchequer is the person who is in charge of or responsible for the financial side of the branch. So some basic law-related things: you have to be 18 and a citizen of Ontier and a member in good standing with the SCA. You can't hold more than one office within the group you are the Exchequer for, which is how I get around being the Exchequer for the canton and not for the barony. You can't live at the same address or be in a relationship with any of the other signers on the bank account, because you could have some problems. You have to be willing to be neutral to your branch, because people will come to you to ask you questions and expect a fair and honest response. And then you have to be acceptable to the crown, coronet, principality, kingdom officers, etc., because you work for them, with them, for them. So your basic responsibilities are going to be, first and foremost, a good steward of your branch's financial health and wellness. She labeled it here as monies. Come up and maintain with a budget, keep a journal of transactions, reconcile the bank accounts, fill out quarterly reports, because quarterly reports are fun. Ensure that your group is following kingdom financial policies, and that is society level, kingdom level, principality, for those of you who are in a principality, and a branch level. You have to have a contingency deputy. They don't like to call them drop dead deputies anymore, but really it's a drop dead deputy, to update and maintain the financial policy of your group, and you have to stay in good communication with your group. Reports. You're doing quarterly reports. You're also doing monthly reports, and those monthly reports are basically just having a basic breakdown of how your group is doing at that moment in time. Quarterly reports are follow-ups to the kingdom to make sure you're not on track. One of the big problems that we have had in the past is something gets done incorrectly in January or February, and it gets carried through the entire year because they haven't been doing quarterly reports, and it's then more difficult to fix later on. So quarterly reports are nice because then you can fix it in the moment, if you will. And the monthlies are good between you and your seneschal or your branch. So your branch and everyone in your branch knows how much you're doing, ins and outs, things like that. Some of the basic things, I'm going to skip some of that about NMS, because that's for new Exchequers, and the heralds fees, because we all love paying our heralds. Financial committee, I'm going to skip that one because, well, okay, no, I'll do this one. Financial committee is how all the decisions should be made. No, I don't need it back. It's how financial decisions have to be made, because you as an Exchequer are never making a financial decision by yourself. You are coordinating a decision that is acceptable to the committee. The committee is made up of 3 to 5 people. Sometimes in smaller branches, it's more. It's everybody at the meeting, everyone who's a member who's at the meeting. Additional duties. If you have if you are in a branch that has a coronet, in this case, it depends on how the financial committees are breaking down. So at this point, I'm going to assume you're at a baronial level when I say coronet, and there's usually two, and so they count as one person. That office of the B&B, or however you want to label them, count as one person, so that you can't get a excessive influence on that group. Yes, and teams that work together. I'm laughing at the video of Their Excellencies Sarah Maria hugging and being all good people. It's okay. I got a little bit of your video in my screen. It's okay. The financial committee should consist of the Exchequer, the Seneschal, the Coronet, at least, and possibly 2 to 3 other people of good standings in the barony, in the group, in the shire, in the principality, however you want to do it, that are acceptable to the populace to be a fair representation. So I know Wastekeep's financial committee is Her Excellency Gudrun and myself, Lady Anna, who's the Exchequer, Honorable Lady Chosa, who's the Seneschal, and then we have Master Roland, who is the previous Exchequer, and Mistress Catriona, who is the founding Baroness. She's been playing for the entire time, and she is like the bedrock of prudence when it comes to the financials. She's got a lot of the history and, you know, a good idea of what should and shouldn't be doing. What we should and shouldn't be doing. There we go. You're supposed to meet on a regular basis. That gets a little more difficult lately. Zoom meetings are fine, phone calls are fine, even emails are fine, as long as you can report what has happened, what will be happening. Financial policy is the governing documents of your branch when it comes to the financial aspects. It's much like the kingdom law or the baronial minor carta or whatever documents, however you want to label them. And basically it says how you're going to take money, how you're going to give money out, how you're going to approve that spending, and what is an appropriate use. It has to be approved by the financial committee, then by the branch, and then up the chain. So if you're in a principality, by the principality exchequer, and in the kingdom, by the kingdom exchequer. Now, kingdom financial policies have to be approved by society. So it's everything is going up the giant chain. The financial policy needs to include these, these things here that she's listed: timeframes, how you're writing checks, how money's coming in and coming out. I'm going to skip budgeting because it's fun. We're not going to talk about that. These are important ones that will come back and bite you later on if you don't do them. So you need to publish those financial committee meetings. Everyone who is a paying member, excuse me, of the SCA can look and see how much money you have, how much money you're spending. There are some limitations with that. It has to be a reasonable request, and at the time and schedule that is available to the Exchequer. So if someone wants to see the books, the person who wants to see the books will need to figure out and come see the Exchequer. It doesn't happen very often because most Exchequers are willing to share all of those details pretty much at a drop of a hat. Some important things: we don't write checks for cash. You don't write checks and sign checks for yourself. You can't buy alcohol. You can't buy membership. You're not supposed to pay for events, and there are ways around that, but pretty much it's just easier. You don't pay for events, and you never do a pre-signed check. Events. She's got here talking about best practices for events. I'm not going to go into that too much, other than the person who is I see a hand raised from Clovis.
Oh, sorry. When you say pay for events, we're talking site fees, correct? I mean, not site fees, gate fees.
I'm talking gate fees, and the way I say shouldn't, when was it Three Mountains a couple years back did a symposium at the Girl Scout camp up Mount Hood.
Mhm.
That was training, so branches were paying for the training. So
Okay.
it's an event. So like if I want to go to an event, the branch can't pay for me to go to the event.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for the clarification.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Cash management. Money comes into the gate, it never leaves that box. And I use the box as a generic, like money can physically leave the box, but you never give money out of the box to someone else. So if you do a refund is done with a check after the event. It's never done from the gate box. You're never paying for, someone needs to go buy some more water. That's not coming out of the gate box. It's not a fund like that. It's seed money goes in, seed money comes out and gets redeposited, and all of the site fees go in and get deposited in that. Exchequers cannot be the primary gate person for their branch's events. And the reason is the Exchequer has to be that neutral third party as the second count of the gate cash. And if you're the gate person, you can't be a second count on your own amounts of money. So that's that. It's like similar to the 2 deep rule when it comes to kids. It's a 2 deep rule when it comes to money. And exchequers are supposed to be the second person on that one. You can be the gate person of other branches items. That's fine, because then that branch's exchequer is the second person. Hey, I jumped the gun on the rule. Sweet. Post event, you guys know. Okay. You have to deposit the income. You have to deposit the gate money. It should be in your financial policy of how quickly you have to do that. Usually it's within a week. If you're holding on to money for more than a week, you've got other problems. The gate sheets are your record as an exchequer, and NMS has to do its post-event items, and that's all done by the NMS deputy. She will send you an invoice. You fill out the invoice and send her the check. So you want to be, you have to remember that the SC money is not your money, but you are responsible for it. So she puts it this way: be honest, courteous, and responsible, and honorable in your dealings with everyone, including the populace, your superior officers, and any subordinate officers, and the mundane world. Stop sharing. Boop. Isa, I love that background. It's, for those of you who can't see the picture, Her Excellency of Vulcanfeld, Her Excellency used to be of Vulcanfeld, not just Her Excellency, has a lovely background of like a yes. So I don't want to just break through on the reports because they can get into the weeds a little bit. Know that there are reports as an exchequer. There are, it's all built in Excel, and within OnTier, the online Office 365 application can run those Excel sheets well, if they can. I do it with a Canton. There's a couple of things. It gets a little funny with some of the scripting and the way it saves, and it's a pain in the butt to print because it's some of the ways it does it, but it can run it if you don't own a copy of Excel. The form says you can use OpenOffice. You can use OpenOffice. It's not pretty. It doesn't, it's worse to run OpenOffice than it is to run the online stuff. Things get messed up. The macros don't work. The formulas don't always work. Some of the formulas are just different they're done differently in OpenOffice than they are in Excel. So you end up spending more time trying to fix them than just using Excel. Halima says LibreOffice has been okay for me so far, and and then Siobhan says I used OpenOffice from 2008 to 2012 and a lot of fixing. Yeah, there's a lot of fixing. And so that's what I'm saying. Like the Office version that we have with the onto your page officers' emails will work. It will run it. It's functional, and it's the quote unquote newest version of Excel. So you get all the shiny, happy, sparkly stuff from Microsoft. There's a lot of people who have this fear when it comes to being this Office in particular, and it's not as difficult as it comes across. I'll be honest. The new forms. Isa says the new forms. How do we confirm we have the correct version? I'll come back to that one because that one's a little complicated one. But yeah, it's one of those things that there's lots of detail-orientated bits of it, and there is a time schedule that you have to follow. Let's be honest, most of the offices, you can be a little bit late. You can skip a quarter, maybe. You might get yelled at by your superior officer. You know, your branch seneschal will probably yell at you. You may have if you do that with an Exchequer, things start to get really, really weird. And you will end up, it is one of the offices that if it's not done correctly, will put your branch out of business, like flat out. You will get, you know, the ramifications for intentionally causing harm are criminal. The ramifications for unintentionally causing harm are annoying, but fixable. Okay, so the forms. OnTier has a history of using the combined form. Let me see if I have a copy of it right here. That no, of course not. That'll work. Let me share this one. This is the old training form that is the older version, but it is. Okay, so this is one of the older forms that is in the training packet that we do when we do the training. It is version, come on, there we go. Version 3.1.2 medium unlocked local. The current version from the SCA is version 6. And so you can see it right here. So Yolanda was the Kingdom Exchequer for OnTier. She then took a break. She became the Society Exchequer. And during that time, she worked a lot on this form. This form is like one of her things. The current form from Society doesn't have this. This is the journal page. This is a fake journal page that was done for 2016 for Madrona. I think she took Madrona's work or Madrona's year and put it in there so that they could use it for training, which means that the Society form doesn't have this form, which doesn't fill in further on down in the forms. So if you look at your balance sheet, income sheet, this is going to be, you see it's pulling from other sheets because it's doing a lot of the math for you, which is one of those things that comes in handy month to month, quarter to quarter. But Society doesn't like that form with the journal for some reason. We still haven't quite figured out why. So Lisa, to answer your question, version 6 is the current form, which doesn't have a journal. So what we were telling people this last year was use the form that you're comfortable with throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, when you go to turn in your form, print out the current the form that you're comfortable with, open up the new form from the Society, fill in everything, turn that one in. because then the math is all done for you and you don't have to mess with it. Most of the problems are going to come in when you are transferring information from one location to another, which is one of the reasons that Alonda did that form with the journal entry, because then Excel is doing that transferring of data. So you're putting it in once and it's filling it in all the other places it needs to be filled in. It's really handy. This is the one that is usually done for seneschals, and it gives you a nice idea on the breakdown of the Exchequer from a non-Exchequer point of view. Financial committee, we've got that covered pretty easily. We got that one covered because I was just going over the duplication of who's on the financial committee. This is the financial policy, because most of the time the seneschals think they like to control everything, and they don't. The seneschal is not your boss. Kingdom Exchequer, Principality Exchequer, they're your boss. Don't let them try to boss you around too much. That comes back to that whole being able to work well with others. There's a thing in here on time frames and methods for emergency expenses. In a perfect world, you guys have a budget set out for what you're going to spend money on. You know when you're going to spend money on it. You spend money on it. You tell the financial committee that you spent money on it. The financial committee, through the Exchequer, reports to the branch that you spend money on it. Everyone's happy. Everyone's good to go. That always doesn't work because it's not a perfect world. There are times when you need to spend money outside of that, whether it's unbudgeted or it's an emergency fix, or the trailer got a flat tire and someone had to spend $300 to get it towed and fixed on their way to an event. Whatever it is, keep that in mind and realize that you have to have a way to cover those extenuating circumstances, and give the people who have those, who need those, give them the grace to realize that that's okay. I know in Wastekeep itself, we've had people, artisans who make things, who would like to be repaid for supplies. They don't always have the receipts from whatever, because they bought it several years ago, or they needed to buy new things. And, so they can write up a little receipt that says, I made this for, it costs this much in supplies, and allow the financial committee and the barony / group the ability to make those repayments for things. Now, remember, there's some oddities with how you can pay for things, how you need to label that you're paying for them, because we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So you can't just give money to other people. You have to, there has to be things that go towards that 501c3's overall goal, which is education for medieval pre-1650s, I think is what they changed it to now. They took Europe out, but so as long as you can do that, then chances are pretty good that you're able to do a appropriate refund of money. And if you've got, I wandered on that one, I apologize. You've got to have a way to cover that. So if you have it in there in your financial committee to cover that, then you can come back to that. I wandered a lot on that, and I apologize. I had like 3 thoughts going at once. Sometimes that happens. Yeah, I know. Bank statements, PO. So this is more for the seneschals on how they do the exchequers. This a lot has changed in the last, especially 2 years, about the PO boxes. Most branches had a PO box so that their bank statement could be going to it, so that the seneschal could open up the bank statement, see it, sign it, pass it off to the exchequer. I don't know of many branches who are still doing that. Most of them have gone to the online banking style, where you can get a PDF of the bank statement and especially over the last 2 years with the no contact and everything else. Most of the official branch policies should include something on how that is being done. Most branches do some sort of variation of the Exchequer sends the Seneschal a PDF of the bank statement and the monthly income statements and say, have you seen this? Please say yes or no. And the Seneschal then says, yep, I've seen them, you're good to go, thank you. And that way, both people have it, and you have proof that the Seneschal at least has seen it. You have proof that the Seneschal has said they have at least seen it. You can't prove that they actually saw it, but they said they did. The online access is fine as long as both Seneschal and Exchequer have codes to get into it. That is because there shouldn't be any reason for one person to only have access to the account. There can't be a reason for only one person. So your Seneschal your Seneschal is the legal representation of your branch. They need to have the ability to see how things are going. If you want to break it down into mundane terms, the Seneschal is the CEO or COO of a corporation, and the Exchequer is the CFO. They work together. Signers, we went over this a little bit, but chances are pretty good your signers are not what you think they are, especially if the bank's been around for a while. Rating monarchs cannot be. When at one point in Wastekeep, when Steercar was the Seneschal, he was a signer. This was in between his first and second reign. We actually had him as a signer on the bank account, and we had his deputy on the signer on a bank account, because we were pretty sure he was going to win again, or at least try to win again. And once he did, and he was crown prince, his signature authority had to come off like that week. Only one person living in the household. My wife cannot be a signer on my account or on the branch's account. And that's just to help reduce the undue influence. There is some question that people have been starting to have if a peerage relationship counts as an undue influence. There are some people who have said, hey, this person maybe shouldn't be on the account because they're in a fealty relationship with somebody else. I'm on the policy that if you've got a peerage, you probably shouldn't have to worry about that. But there are people who have asked that question, so keep that in mind. And SCA members, they cannot be on there. But I'm gonna guess if the bank account has been around for a couple of years, you've probably got an old kingdom person on there, two Exchequers ago, 3 Seneschals ago, and a random person who doesn't play anymore. If you are the Exchequer, one of the things you should be doing is looking at who is the signer on your account, assuming you are, because not all the time, modern banking laws are such that it can be difficult to do these things. And Issa's giving me that look because she works at a bank. Because honestly, we look like we're laundering money. Money comes in, cash, huge amounts of cash come in on a weekend camping event, and then money goes out sometimes. So from a banking point of view, it looks a little weird. So you have to make sure that everything is above board and everything is documented. So who should be on it? Who has to be a signer on your bank account? Your branch Exchequer should. They're the ones writing the checks. The branch Seneschal should. This is one of those reasons why the Exchequer and the Seneschal cannot be a married couple or living in the same house, because they both need to be on there, Kingdom Exchequer or their authorized representative. What usually happens is when the bank account is set up, the current Kingdom Exchequer becomes a signer, and then when that current Kingdom Exchequer steps down, they're usually a deputy for a while at least, and then they roll into something else. And most of the Kingdom Exchequers are fine. The last 5 Kingdom Exchequers have been fine with having any of the 4 previous Kingdom Exchequers as their representative on the bank accounts. And then another member of the financial committee, at least one other member of the financial committee, And depending on the branch, you also might have to do some weird geographic items. So Wastekeep is most of East Washington. The Exchequer lives in Richland. The other signers, one lives in Moses Lake, one lives here in Walla Walla, that's me, and one lives in Waitsburg. So it's reasonably well, but Anna doesn't have, until Anna gets our seneschal, she hasn't oh no, she does. She did get that one done. Never mind. There's another one in Richland. So she's got someone within 5 or 10 miles. For the onto your PayPal accounts, Dame Catherine was the onto your PayPal deputy. Her signer was in Dragon's Lair. So checks had to go from here in Whitesburg, or here on this side of the state, over to Dragon's Lair for a second signature to their intended person. It takes a while. I got added as a signer because she lives 10 miles from me. So she could, actually get a check signed within a day and sent off to the branches. So the people who are running PayPal, especially before the dark times, were able to get their checks a week sooner. So just keep that in mind. This really, this is a should be on it, but other people can be authorized signers as long as they're members in good standing. I'm not going to talk about seneschals because they're seneschals. Income statement and balance sheet. I can show you that if you really want it. It's more paperwork. It's how you can describe how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and where that money was spent in that month. It's not detailed as to say, we spent $20 on this, but it's, our starting balance was $12,000. Our ending balance is $12,000.04 because we made 4 cents in interest. Because, interest these days are whatever. When you're running events, when things are in full swing, that's going to be a little bit more complicated because you're going to have money going out for events, site fees, site copy, PO box, mileage for people, so you're going to have more coming in, more going out. So that could be a little bit more complicated than you can get as a snapshot. Reports are due the same time as everyone else's reports. So this is from the principalities. You guys who are in principalities know this. Your reports are due earlier. Are they still the 15th of the month, or have they moved to the 10th? I'm getting confused looks from their excellencies. Yeah, I thought it was the 15th. Someone said something about the 10th. So 15th, thank you. So they are the 15th for the principalities, so that the principalities can roll up on that same time schedule. So today is the 23rd. So if you're in a principality and you haven't done your report yet for 2021, you're late. And if you're not in a principality, you've got another week. And then I'll come start knocking on your door. NMS. I'll go over this real quick. So NMS is non-member surcharge. And it's money that goes from people who aren't members, and it's sent to corporate. It's how they pay their insurance, functionally. This is an old one because it has family cap on there. We don't do family cap anymore in Ontier, so you can ignore that second from the bottom one. It's $5. It's $5 for non-membership, and it gets a little funky because when it was MMR. No, it is NMR now, isn't it? Yeah, this is old. We should change this. So it used to be called NMS as non-member surcharge. It's now NMR. I know. Amateurs, I tell you. NMR is how the SCA as a corporation pays some of its bills. They do it through memberships and then through non-member surcharge. And that's used for insurance. Like, when you have to buy insurance for an event, that's where that is coming from. And it's $5 for every adult. You can't pay it on a comp because you can't comp a non-member. It gets a little funny sometimes, but that's a whole other philosophical discussion for later days. I'll be honest, there's a lot of like, this is how you have to do it. And then there's, well, what about this? And it comes in from the side, and you have to sit there and kind of try and figure out how you fit within the rules and be able to justify that. I had a long conversation yesterday about sergeantry regalia, because by strict reading of the rules, regalia is checked out and tracked. Awards are given, but award costs can't be more than $20 per corpora. So if you have, say, a nice belt buckle for a sergeant, that probably costs more than $20. Now, I know in Wastekeep, those things are passed down between sergeants. A little bit of history. This one goes to the from the sponsor to the sponsoree who becomes one. They wear it, they pass it on to someone else. Well, those know people now, they need a new belt. So do they have to pay for the new belt buckle, or do they get a new one? Well, if they get a new one, yeah, I'm looking at your faces over there. It's a complicated conversation depending on how you want to answer that question. The general consensus is it's a gray area for that one. It's not regalia because it's an award, but it's not really an award because it gets passed down. It, in theory, is returned to their excellencies if you get a peerage, but some people still keep it. Dion, who was the founding Baron of Wastekeep, was a sergeant of Madrona in 1970 something. His knight's belt that he wore had that belt buckle on it. It wasn't returned. But it's also 1982 or something that he was knighted. So things change a little bit. I think the thing it takes a conversation. There are ways around most things and ways you can work within the rules to be on the level. Yes, Your Excellencies.
I would say that the best way, if you're facing one of these situations, is to look at, would you feel comfortable having to explain this to an auditor? Are you strong enough in your conviction of your reading of the law to feel like you could solidly say, this is why I've come to this conclusion based on this statute, blah, 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 blah. If you're looking at it and saying, well, I can sort of work around this and I can rationalize this in my own head, but the thought of having to explain it to the Kingdom Exchequer makes you kind of sick, then don't go that way. Because that's
that's a great way of putting it, because there are resources out there. There is a Facebook Exchequer group. All of the regions have a reporting deputy that we're all veteran exchequers. We all, you get most exchequers, they will love to argue with you, and not like yell and argue, but like figure out the best way to solve a problem, because they like to problem solve. So, if you have a problem, ask somebody, because also if you're going to be doing this, sergeant's belt, if passed along, amortized for each passing down. Oh, too much paperwork. They have removed most regalia from the current version of reporting, because regalia doesn't depreciate and it doesn't increase in value. But it's not supposed to has that. Yeah, no, even the coronets don't depreciate. Yeah, so regalia does need repairs, but so does a trailer, so does a tent. And you might not put the tent, anything over what is it, $2,000 now? They recently raised, yeah, they increased in replacement. Yeah, they increase in replacement value. Yes, they do increase in replacement value. But they changed the amortization, or sorry, excuse me, the depreciation, because there were times when like it used to be so low, and like there was a laptop on there from 1993, and it's still on there. Like we don't have that anymore. So they're trying to break it, make it easier and less. The depreciation is a funny. So we have the Canton has a Dragon Wing on there that we spent $400 for in 2004, and we still have it, so we still have to carry it over. Yes, it's a chunk of cash if we have to replace it, but if it's stolen or lost, we're not going to get anything on the insurance value of it. There is no insurance value on it. They're talking at kingdom level of not putting some of the royal regalia on there and not insuring them, because the cost of replacement is equal to or less than the cost to insure them. Those crowns are 20 grand, but you're going to pay that much in 4 years to insure them. So set some money aside. Clovis has ideas. I can see it in his face.
We're just
I was just in shock that the cost to insure them was that much. So
yeah, and part of it is because there's not a good way to value them.
Yeah, well, so like ours, and this is relevant. For years, we were recording our current coronets, our baronial coronets, as 2,662, which was the initial. That is what we paid for them. But it got updated up to like 6,000 something, because that's what they're actually worth. They're silver. They're semi-solid silver coronets. And it can be tricky, because a lot of the value that's imbued into our crowns and coronets is it's intangible value rather than being actual value. And so sometimes it can be difficult as Scadians to separate the game from the government. So it can be helpful to remember, we are not we are keeping records for the government. It's not in one sense, yes, it is for our fellow Scadians, but in the end, the person who is the most concerned with how we're keeping our records is the
government. Yeah. So. And it took me a while, because the people were like, oh my gosh, the form is so complicated, it doesn't make any sense. And if you're doing, if you're an accountant, it doesn't make any sense. It's like what I figured out early on was your form is this much of the kingdom pie. So your form gets amalgamated into the kingdom, and then the kingdoms all get amalgamated into corporate. So if you want to break it down, we're a large corporation, and this, you are one department. This is your department's budget of a sub, company of a corporation. So the difference between $5 and $500 for us might be a lot. For them, it's not. So,
but related to that, for us, one check carried. I'm so sorry. This is your class.
No, that's fine. I love conversation. Conversation works better. Conversation works better for this. Otherwise, you're staring at Excel sheets, and that gets really boring. I'll be honest.
No, we're staring at your handsome face while your wife comes and gives you smooches, right? Exactly. So, but what I was going to say, for us, it might be just like 1 or 2 checks that get carried over from 2021 to 2022 that didn't get deposited. But if you roll that up to the corporate level, so one little discrepancy on our report might not look that big, but if you're having to deal with 100 small discrepancies, by the time you get to the top, it gets really nasty. So,
well, like, let me segue with that one. One of the things in those training bits talks about how you have to be, genteel and reasonable with people, and tight, not like tight-lipped, but but keep track of those things. So if someone bounces a check, you shouldn't be going and saying, hey, so-and-so bounced a check, there's, blah, 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 blah. But you have to keep track of it, because what has happened in the past is there have been merchants who travel from, across 4 different kingdoms and merchant in 22 different events, and they all bounce a check. For you, it might not be that big of a deal, but they have now committed, let's be honest, a federal crime across multiple state lines. Not they're going to go after it, but maybe we shouldn't be taking their checks. Maybe someone should have a conversation with them. So the little ripples can go out. I'm going to set that down so I stop playing with it, because I talk with my hands. I apologize. But those of you who can't see all the video, Zamini and Chloe are like, no, it's fine, totally fine. Yeah. Tiny dinosaur hands. I got it. So on the regalia that needs repairs point of view, yes, have a budget for it. If you want to have a dedicated fund where you say proceeds from this dessert auction are going towards the repair of the coronets, that's fabulous. That's easy to do. You can put little earmarks on your money. You can set up dedicated funds, but don't. It's more trouble than it's worth. But you can earmark them. If you want to say, we know that we're going to need this much money to replace, let me give you an example. Wastekeep's coronets. We've had 3 sets of coronets since 1982. The first set of coronets were done for Dion and Catriona, and Dion has a head that's about this big. It's tiny. So when they stepped down after 17 some odd years, and Ulrich and Megan stepped up, new coronets were made that they were solid bands with a spacer in the back that they could lace and adjust the size. So those were made in 1993, I think. Do the math. They went through 4 sets of coronets, and they were they needed to be retired. So we knew that we were going to retire them, and we knew, I was at Exchequer at the time, we knew that we were going to get new ones for when we did the changeover that in 2017. So we started setting money aside in 2015 and said, we're just going to put $100 a month into this earmarked fund. Our savings account let us do multiple savings account. We could earmark it in the thing. It shows up in the general fund. It's all there, but we're keeping track of it. Our coronets were $2,000 each. They were done in 2017. They're really nice. They're articulated. They have size because I have a large head. But the other coronets, there is value to them from a historical point of view, from a sentimental point of view, from a historical point of view. They're made of, I think they're made of silver. I don't know, honestly, but they have no other value, no real value. So we have coronets on, and then we added a piece to them, so we paid another $1,000 total. So they're worth $2,500 each now. So there is, that value is set aside in the depreciation schedule. No, sorry, it was it was not in the depreciation schedule, because at the time it was not a depreciating item. It was regalia. We're not tracking regalia anymore. So according to the SCA, Wastekeep does not own any coronets. It does not own any cloaks. It does not own any swords, any shields, anything. According to the SCA Inc., Wastekeep owns 2 trailers and a tent. Maybe 2 tents. Maybe 2 tents and 1 trailer. But because that's what's on the depreciation schedule, which is the only thing they really care about. Now, another thing to keep in mind that Bluff and North found out about when they had their trailer stolen is the SCA does not insure those things. They say if they're on the depreciation schedule, they're insured. They're not. So keep that in mind. Be responsible. Keep it in inventory. Make sure you have a chatelaine who's keeping a good inventory. And realize that, sometimes bad things happen. I even edited myself on the fly.
We just had our rapier championship, and we just had the realization our Chamberlain was not at the event. And we've been trying to be better about signing out our regalia.
Growing property and homes.
We all completely spaced having our new rapier champion sign for the regalia. Now, fortunately, he's a good sport, so we'll get him.
Legitimate question. Your regalia for your rapier. So this is a good segue. Your regalia for your rapier tournament, or your rapier champion. What is it?
It is a sword with scabbard and belt. A
baldric.
Thank you, baldric, and the scroll. And that's it. Our heavy champion is a different question, but yeah, for our rapier champion, I believe it is just the sword, scabbard, belt. Yes, as listed previously.
For you guys, so you have, say, 3 things, right? And in theory, the Chamberlain has them marked as this is the rapier champion's regalia, and it is currently in possession of so-and-so. And in a perfect world, they would have a paperwork that says, yes, I have these items, and they belong to the barony of Terra Primaria, and if something happens to them, you guys can come get them, right? So there's a form that is called, I want to say it's like baronial possession in homes, because it was written for a barony, but it's a Word document, and so you can change it to say, canton possessions or whatever. Because somewhere, I want to say it was either mid-realm or Meridies, a king died while he was on the throne and was buried in his crown. That's the story. I don't know how apocryphal it is, but that's the story. And that's one of the ways that they say, yeah, you need to do these things. Yeah, I know. What? He died? Yes. Those of you not in the chat, there was just a what? Yeah. I know of, like, one of the conversations we were having about the sergeantry belts yesterday was, people have been buried in them. And that's probably fine, because in my brain, it's an award. Fuzzy bits there.
I think it depends on the group too.
I think it does too.
That reminds me, that story though, every time we come across a rule, and it's the same I work for the state of Oregon, and it's the same thing with state government too. Every time you come across a rule, it seems completely stupid and overly strict. There's always a name attached to the rule. There's always a reason. The comment in the chat was there going to be some really confused archaeologists in 5,000 years. Yeah. That king's legacy will live far beyond him. But yes, there's always a name to go with the rule, and just try not to be the name for that rule.
So for those of you who don't know, Ontier does have a rule named after it. It has a limitation. There's a limitation to the number of devices you can submit in one letter to the College of Heralds or the College of Arms because of Ontier.
Not it.
Nope, that was Steercar. That was the year that Steercar made it that everyone had to have a name and device, at least in submission, to attend Crown, to fight in Crown. Yeah. So Ontier had a letter. I want to say, Fina can probably correct me on this one. I think it was like 78 items, which is a lot.
That's too much. We've been told. We have strict rules now. No more than 50.
Yeah. That's our fault.
It is our fault. Yes.
50.
50 is the maximum we can put on a single letter. They prefer if we do less. But 50 is the maximum.
You think? Oh my God.
From the Exchequer point of view,
often very unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of paperwork for me. And thus rules are made. Yes, exactly, Honora. And that's how rules are made. Anybody have any questions? We want to chat?
I do. It's me. I'm so sorry. So I was wondering, could you please talk a little bit about 1099s? Because 1099s were one of the things that kind of came out of the blue. And I'm pretty sure that I mishandled absolutely none of them at all, ever, ever.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, a 1099 is the form that you fill or that you use to pay someone personally that if they make more than, I want to say it's 600, it might be
Yes.
400, it might be 600
No, it's 6.
a year, 600 a year,
Yes.
they have to pay taxes on it. It's like, it's a contractor basically. Now, I'm a vendor from the SCA. I'm an artisan for the SCA, and I make a crown. And I make a crown for Terra Primaria, coronet for Terra Primaria. Let's be good. And I, my work and time and pay was $1,000. No, it was $500. It's under the $600 limit. So you as the Exchequer, if you don't get the information from them, then if I want something to Three Mountains for 500 and to Madrona for 500 and to somewhere in Ethelmark for 500, I've now made $2,000 from the SCA, but each branch is only giving me 500.
Ooh.
So that's why they want to get 1099s to everybody and send it up to corporate and let them deal with it.
May I
And
jump in here?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Lori. I own a CPA firm. 1099s are required for services, not products.
And there's a
So if
difference
you-
between
No.
businesses and personal, right?
No,
Okay.
no, sorry. Some
No,
people
it's fine.
don't understand that, but the truth is, it is if you have provided a service, not if you have sold a product. So if you've sold a crown or any other item, it doesn't matter if it's $2 or 2,000, that is a sale of product. However, if you perform a service, like you're a plumber or an accountant or a lawyer, if you perform a service, then you receive the 1099. It's for services. This is why the box is labeled non-employee compensation. In the old days, it used to be a 1099 MISC for
Right.
miscellaneous, but the new ones are now 1099 NECs, which stands for non-employee compensation. And the issue is that someone has provided a service and been paid for it as a non-employee. But if you sold them something, if a tangible item changed hands, there is no need for a 1099.
Now, is that also for like the coronets where it's $1,000 worth of supplies and then $1,000 worth of work to make it, but you're selling the coronet? Where does that fall in?
Well, if they pay you $1,000 for your work, then you are receiving non-employee compensation. If the total that they paid you was $2,000 and 1,000 of it was for materials and 1,000 of it was for services, then you must receive a 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation. But if 1,500 of it was materials and 500 was services, you're off the hook.
For that one thing though, but if you,
Correct.
But that's, and that's where they're coming with. And Siobhan, does it apply to Canadians because we report to the US?
No,
I don't think so.
it does not. The payer has to put their federal ID number. And as you were pointing out, if this is performed for several sub-entities of an entity that has a single federal ID number, then the overarching entity, in our case, the SCA, has to provide a 1099, or they really want you to. The has to is still a little iffy, but you provide the 1099 because it's coming from one federal ID number to a single entity who's receiving it on their federal ID number or Social Security.
Yeah. And for the record, the SCA Inc. Tax federal ID is pretty much everybody but the East Kingdom and the Mid Realm,
Right.
and Pennsylvania.
And then the rest of the story is this: because the SCA is not claiming it as a tax deduction, because the SCA is not filing a tax return per se. I don't think they file a 990 or a CT12. The thing is, you know, it's not as much of an issue because nobody's claiming the deduction.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I kind of got into the weeds there.
No, that's one of those things. And I think part of the issue is I'm not an accountant, and
I am.
Yeah. Well,
So-
and like I know of the last.
And you're like,
of the
who the
five.
hell are you anyway? I'm the deputy for 3M. I'm not even a real one. But we got into my corner of the world.
CPAs.
Damn, I know. And it's a CPA, MBA, CFP. So Jesus God, right? Sorry.
It's okay.
Yep.
More
Way too
information
many
is
letters.
always good.
I will now sit down and shut up.
No. We're gonna tap you later on for more information. I'm sure.
I'm here for you. And pardon my lack of screen, by the way. I leaped out of the shower to be here in time, and you don't want to see me with my towel on my head looking damp.
That's fine. Dina, you have a question?
Yeah, and you don't have to, we can, if this is better, if later is better, we can do it then. I was just, for those of us who haven't used PayPal for events, can you kind of talk a little bit about what we need to do that?
PayPal. People think PayPal. Oh my God, I'm gonna use PayPal. No, PayPal is being a credit card processor. So
Yeah.
there's two there's two halves of it. Half number one is PayPal is being a credit card processor. So you're using their little swiper device to plug into a tablet or to Bluetooth to a tablet to process credit cards. They charge, they just changed all their charges, but I want to say it's like
30%, 30 cents an invoice plus 2 point something percent.
But that's for the invoices. That's for part two of it.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah, there's a small percentage fee of credit card charges. It's roughly the same as any of the Square, yes, and different fees in Canada. It's roughly the same for any of the Square's point of sale, whatever, however you're doing it. Part number two is the prepay invoicing. That's 30 cents plus 2 point whatever. Unless you're in Canada, then it's 3 point whatever. Unless you're in the UK and it's 4 point something. And anyway, yeah. So, and that is, they get an invoice. They can pay the invoice with their PayPal account. They can pay the invoice with a credit card. They can pay with a debit card. They can pay however they want to pay because functionally, it's just being a credit card processor. The difference in how you have to budget for it is not a lot of difference. If you budget 5% of whatever, you're going to get coverage. You're going to then overestimate how much fees you're going to get charged, and so that you'll actually get more than you were expecting. For Canadian branches, it's even worse than that. So in the US, the US cards get charged differently, 2.9 plus 30 per transaction, I think, here in Canada. Yeah, I think so, but they just changed their fees recently, at least for the US. So US transactions, Ontier's PayPal is a US transaction because it is using Ontier's bank account, which is a US bank account. And it's censored from the current PayPal deputy's home address, who lives in Wellsmere, up in Spokane. So when a Canadian is, when you're using, excuse me, when you're using a Canadian card, it's going to charge different than when you're using a US card. I don't think they're currently charging different prices for different kinds of credit cards. So MasterCard, Visa, and Discover, I believe, are all the same. So, and then you also have to deal with when, from a budgeting point of view, the money's coming in as US dollars. So Canadian users and Canadian groups, when you're paying that $20 Canadian, it's converting it to US dollars at the best. Yes, Siobhan.
I actually ran gate for the first crown where we had PayPal in Canada. So I got to hang out with now Dame Catherine quite a lot and sort things out. Basically, from the event side of it, Canadian dollars are Canadian dollars are Canadian dollars. You're being charged $5 Canadian, you pay $5 Canadian. PayPal has different currency accounts within the big old account. So we're going to be paying Canadian dollars into the Canadian currency account. Later on, it gets converted into US dollars and then back because, you know, the percentages of the event and blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. But the simplest way of looking at it is $5 is $5, depending on where your event is happening. The confusing part comes on later. And for Exchequer 101, we don't need to worry about that. That's a kingdom type thing.
That's like,
Anyway.
that's at least a 300 level class. And I think, honestly, I think they've updated. I think On Tier's PayPal account is converting Canadian funds at the moment of transaction these days, instead of having to pool it, because On Tier's PayPal account was kind enough to let the College of Arms use it to process Virtual Herald's point 1 and 2, because Kathy lives 15 miles from me. And it's good to know people. And so the Canadian ones that were coming in were being converted to US dollars instantaneously. The pounds and euros, we had to say transfer, which is a little bit of a guessing game, because you're saying transfer, and so it's going to do it that day, and you're hoping that the transaction is within the certain window where the exchange rate is favorable to you, because that changes minute to minute. So if you want PayPal, if you want to do it, you need to talk to the PayPal deputy. There's a couple of things you need to have set up in advance, and you have to expect that you're going to end up charging or paying for the convenience to have the people who are coming to your event use a credit card. So keep that in mind. Per our PayPal rules, we can't charge people extra to cover those fees. So a lot of groups will do, it's your money that you're paying. And so when you're doing a Kingdom event these days, they expect to see, a PayPal fee expense in your budget. But like, I did the 12th night where we did it. No, it was 12th night? Collegium. The first Collegium, which was the first PayPal event in On Tier, was here. It was on a long weekend, and Monday was a holiday. So I couldn't deposit the $7,000 in cash that I had until Tuesday. So I was responsible for $7,000 in cash for 2 extra days. I didn't like that. I felt a little uncomfortable with that. But the $6,000 that was sitting in PayPal, I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, it cost me $100 for that event, but I'm okay with it. So.
Yeah, Terra Pomaria, we're not a huge barony. We're a decent sized barony. But we've moved towards doing PayPal pre-reg for most, if not all, of our events when possible, simply because it also gives you a better idea of what you're looking at attendance-wise. if people have spent the money to say that they're coming to your event, they are much more likely to be coming to your event. It can be a little time consuming. I would definitely, if you have a larger event, recommend making sure you have somebody who's going to be able to help you with at least part of it. But that's also because okay, so let's be honest. I've created specialized gate sheets where I can pull the information out of Google Forms and use the mail merge function to turn it into gate sheets in Word, because I'm weird. So maybe other people don't need someone to help them because they're not spending their time sitting there trying to figure out how to make their formulas perfect. But I would say
that's great.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love it.
Great.
Which, yes,
What's
has got
the word I'm looking for here? Oh yeah, nerd. There we go.
Nerd. Geeking out. But it's amazing.
I was going to say, Your Excellency, pardon me, I've only been an Exchequer once, and you. So so when it comes to PayPal,
I've only had each Exchequer job once. Does that count?
What?
Well, I was Waste Keeps for 4 years. I've been the Cantons for 6. Laurel now for 3. That's once.
Your Excellency, is this something that you would feel comfortable explaining to an auditor?
Yeah, probably not.
Anyway, so I was my 2 cents, not that it's necessarily worth a dime, would be that we have found pre-reg PayPal to be very useful. It is super handy. It speeds up your gate quite a bit, especially when you split them out between paid and unpaid. So then you can just be like, hey, you've paid, go this way. You haven't, go this way. We have found that at-gate PayPal can be more cumbersome simply because you always have to have someone there who is authorized to use PayPal. And that's a whole different set of, I guess, certifications would be almost
the best way to, yeah. It's
you're basically paying for the convenience of having an easier gate. And
so things to
money.
keep in mind with the PayPal prepay option, which I agree is super handy. One, you, by Kingdom policy, you have to allow them to pay other ways.
Yes.
So they can prepay and send you a check. Basically is how that works down to, for those backward countries that still use checks. And 2, yeah, I know, your refunds aren't coming from PayPal. They cannot come from PayPal. They have to come from the branch. Can the Exchequer be the PayPal person? Hold on, I'll come back to that one.
Yep.
They have to come from the branch funds after that. Now, when you say, so the question was, can the Exchequer be the PayPal person or only at other Kingdom events? Are you talking about the person sitting at gate?
Yeah.
Yes, they can.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure.
Yeah, the Exchequer can sit a shift at gate. That is completely encouraged.
Oh, there's
I encourage everyone to sit at gate at least for 1 shift.
Yep.
You learn a lot. You are the first person to interact with somebody. You get to see everybody and say hi to everybody and be genial if you're a people person. And if you're not a people person, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Just that, getting set up through the PayPal thing is a bit of a pain in the butt. And once it's done, it's kind of nice to have that in the pocket. But I wanted to make sure.
So usually what happens for events that use PayPal, pay here is what they call it, is the PayPal deputy will set up an account or 2, depending on how many stations you're going to be planning on using. And usually it's like event name number 1 and event name number 2. So there is a little bit more, it's not like a register where you're checking in and checking out necessarily, depending on how you're doing it, because it's really, really hard to skim money that way. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying it's not a possibility. I'm saying it's more difficult. Because so all you're doing is you are filling out, oh, it's an event, it's a member, and it's 2 people. There's 2 members. Okay, cool. That's $40. You know, they see the screen, they put the card in, they sign the thing. Do you want a receipt? No. Good. They fill out the paperwork. Done. Hopefully. There are styles of doing gates that have, you know, one person doing the check-in on the gate sheet and then handing a ticket to the person down the way to pay. I've seen that happen too. It was a little weird for me, but to each his or her own.
Okay.
Is your closing line going to be that people get funny about money?
I could.
I don't know. So I will say that is one of the rules that
Etienne, that's one of Etienne's rules.
yeah,
So
and
Etienne was the king of Exchequer when I started doing this. She became my pelican. She's the go-to in the kingdom. She's the current kingdom training. I think she's still technically the current kingdom training deputy. She's the one who does the training usually. And her line is, people get funny about money. And it means you have to be above board. You have to be visible. And if things look hinky, even if they're not, you're going to get people looking at you funny and starting to talk. So make sure you're above board. Make sure everything's open and everything is good.
Brilliant.
I can't.
And the other thing is, thanks for your donation.
Yes, that's a great line to get to use too.
Because not everything that is paid for has to be reimbursed.
Mhm.
She tells the story of someone who rented a whole bunch of chairs for an event. Wasn't planned, wasn't part of the event plan. They just rented chairs. They didn't need the chairs. They didn't want the chairs. And then the person wanted to be reimbursed for the chairs. Thank you for your donation. Honora says, when I was seneschal, I told them no one ever wants to see a bunch of lawyers swooping in like harpies from Millipedes. So pay attention to the rules. True.
And again, that I would reiterate that is one of the hard things sometimes to remember, because we are the backside of the SCA when we're doing this. We're the back behind the scenes. And so it can be tricky sometimes because we're playing this game, which is wonderful and beautiful. And, you know, we have kings and queens and knights and all of these amazing people and beautiful clothing. But on the other end of it is the federal government.
We're a 501c3 nonprofit.
And at the end of the day, the federal government is the one that's going to review our paperwork.
Yep.
We say I'm an exchequer, but really I'm an accountant
Yep.
for this. So what else is happening on the event side, on the royalty, on succession, on anything else? It could be moving beans around a factory. It doesn't matter. You still have to follow the rules as they are laid out. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask them when they're small and like niggling. Don't wait until it becomes a problem.
How about we do some final words and then we can all unmute and have a fun time chat.
Final
So-
words, have fun, relax, ask questions if you want to know. If we don't have an answer, we'll figure one out. Don't be afraid to ask.
Sounds good.
Oh, beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss.